All right, let's move on to the advisory council reports.
So in the Curriculum Advisory Council report, as I stated at the last meeting, Dr. Keene, Ms. Haruska, myself, and Pam, we discussed a little bit of the summer school as well as some of the classes that were under 20. The summer school brochure will be the first read tonight. We did bring forward to them a possible textbook adoption, and the purpose of bringing this forward was just to make the Curriculum Council aware of it and to make the board aware of it. We're not exactly sure if we're going to need to purchase that textbook or if we're going to have enough money to purchase that textbook. But the original textbook, if I'm not mistaken, Pam, is like 13 years old.
And we haven't been able to get extra copies, so we have one of our teachers is borrowing from a teacher at a different district who has extra that they're not using. So we haven't even had enough for a class set. So and then we need to get updated for the AP tests, so that it's for AP Environmental Science, and it's so outdated that it doesn't really have enough relevant research and information that the kids need to know. So we're looking at the new textbook. Should there be funds available to purchase it when we're ready, just getting our material and information together. Currently, we have 2 sections of AP Environmental Science for next year with 53 students enrolled in it.
So what Tim and I will do is we work with the Finance Council putting the budget together. These types of items will be more or less, we'll start working on these items once we know the reductions. What other budget line items need to be reduced. We'll start looking at these things in more April and May. So, but we wanted to make sure the board is aware of it, that if we already have a line item for textbooks repair and rebinding, but if we need to increase that by about $8,000 or so to get the AP Environmental Science books, they might be included in there. We'll work through the Finance Council on that. The other thing is that I'm working on with Pam and the department chairs even though we're dealing with tough budget times, we need to continue to push forward with technology, and to be spending thousands of dollars to rebind textbooks that are 10 and 11 years old is not a good use of funds. So I've instructed Pam and the assistant principal curriculum at this time, Mr. Scanlon, and then if we replace that position, his replacement and the department chairs, we need to start looking at online textbooks. And we're also working with Ms. Dool in the library and some of our tech committee to start developing a plan of how we can become a bring-your-own-device school where kids can bring their own iPads or laptops to school, and eventually we can move in the next couple of years to a one-to-one school, and we could have a lot of our textbooks online and buying those instead of buying hard copies. Maybe just buy hard copy sets for the classrooms and then everything else be online. And we know that Apple released a huge announcement about a month ago that they're working with the 3 of the biggest textbook providers to create a cost-efficient, releases for the iPads. So we're waiting to see if they're eventually going to release something that's a little cheaper than what the iPad is, so that more schools can start doing leasing or iPads or some types of things, so that they can have online textbooks, online materials. So we are keeping track of that, and we're working on that. But money will help drive that as well.
On the AP Environmental, curriculum's going to get a copy of that book to look at, though, review, right?
It is.
So, Jen, you're going to get a copy to review that?
Yeah, it is available, and it does come, when you purchase the book, it does come with an e-book version, too, so that you have access to that.
Good.
And it's interactive, so.
I think we discussed that.
Yes.
And
We did. Yeah.
John, you and I think we discussed it, and our recommendation
You didn't
was.
see the book. Yeah.
We did look at the book.
Did you?
So you did?
I don't know if we looked at. I don't know if we had the book available at that
But
time.
you should.
But you did ask about the online version and some of those things,
Yeah.
Laura. You did ask about that.
Okay, any other questions on AP Environmental Science textbook? Okay.
So back to the first bullet, this graduation requirement study. This is something I think that started last spring, and it's been something that the building administration's been looking at. And after several discussions the board has had with me and in public session, I think that we need to, Pam's going to provide us a summary of what work they've done thus far. And then I think we take the committee that's already in place. We use our curriculum council with Dr. Keene and Ms. Haruska, and we open it up to a few parents and we start to take a full look at our graduation requirements for next year. And I'll let Pam provide you a summary of what work they've done on this already.
The discussion on this happens frequently, and, back in even 2006 and 2007, I was told that there was quite a vigorous discussion of this, but it changed to become more of a discussion of weighted grades and honors classes in AP and what offerings were there. And that's a little bit where we picked up over the last few years. So when I came in, there had been a huge study that was done on the weighted grades, and we made a slight adjustment to that last year. And then we had honors criteria we added last year. And so as the year was winding up, we got back to where the group had started originally, was let's get back to looking at the graduation requirements, and also with the new curriculum push for the Common Core standards that are learning standards that the state of Illinois has adopted with most of the nation at this point, and along with the STEM and STEAM movement with the science, technology, engineering, arts, and math push that is going on nationally. We thought it was the time to start looking at it, and we created a couple of essential questions, and they were: are the current RBHS graduation requirements adequate and fitting of our current mission and future needs? What are the current state of Illinois academic standards and suggestions for high school graduation requirements? How will the new Common Core standards affect our graduation requirements? What are the current college admission requirements for the various college programs where our students are attending? What are the college admissions suggestions from the College Board and ACT? How do we get input from our various stakeholders, such as students, parents, teachers, and community? And how do our graduation requirements reflect or fulfill current or proposed workplace and college readiness standards? So those were some of the questions we started. We also, our Applied Arts Department did some research, went into some, got pulled together a great number of examples in the area to start us off with the discussion, gave us some research, and we began our discussions. Where we are right now is we thought it was important to look at our current graduation requirements and identify what values are embedded in the decisions and choices that exist in our current standards, and see if those values have changed over time or if they should be modified. So that's what we've really been doing lately, is articulating those values, and then what we offer and how we set up our schedule and how we allow students access to classes. We've started to look at that and see really what our graduation requirements mean. For instance, we've looked at everything from within our graduation requirements. We obviously want students to have access to the rigorous college curriculum, if that's what they want, but we also want multiple pathways to satisfy their graduation requirements. So those are some examples. We also, the way we approach our work and what we offer, we want students to have access to a course appropriate to their academic needs, which is why we offered more honors courses recently. We want students to have interventions that are delivered in a timely manner, no matter what their curriculum. So we've been working on some of those things, and we're ready to expand to start getting some input from a larger group. So we look forward to working, collaborating with the council and parents and students, and taking a look at specifically what universities and which high schools we want to compare to, also to see what trends are. But it's a very important process to do, to make sure that our students have the skills and the knowledge that's necessary today, because this is an ever-changing world. Dr. Skinkup was just talking about technology, so there are technology literacy skills that students didn't need years ago when these graduation requirements were put in place. So what do we need to look at, and do we need to modify and make sure that students have the correct opportunities so that they're well placed for the pathways in going into a technical, a career, or college.
So what I think what we'll do from here is, I think we still need to get through our reduction process, at least through the certified staff, but I would think by the end of March, early April, I will work with Mary Ann to coordinate dates with Ms. Ruska and Dr. Keene, and then as I get some dates, what we can try to do is a once-a-month meeting with, get some membership from the department chairs and maybe some of the faculty, and then we could open it up to some community members, and even if you wanted to, we can even have some students on this. And does that sound like what the board was looking for, more of what, looking at their graduation requirements?
Well, and I think the board should have conversation when I go on to, when I look at and I've sent everybody this document in the past. The Illinois State Board of Education requirements. The state requires your minimal far less than what our students graduate with. And if we look even just like the electives, one of art, I think is going forward, the board, we may want to have discussion about requiring or strongly encouraging or guidelines, because once we require something, then we're obligated to fund it. And so we have some classes now that we require that are not required by the state, and we're obligated to fund that, and our hands are tied. Like our fine arts survey. The state only requires 1 year of an elective, and that's, your band, your foreign language, all of that. But by us requiring that, we're forced to fund that. So we may want to have maybe guidelines or pathways and not lock ourselves into having to fund some of these paths.
Well, along those paths, I'd like to see identify what on our curriculum is required, but the state doesn't. I mean, it may just not be fine arts, because those would be the first things I think we'd look at.
One thing I made up for when I was the principal, and Pam and I talked about this a little bit, and I think this would help for the board and help for the committee. Pam, if you can have maybe one of the department chairs or our assistant principal of curriculum put together a spreadsheet, and what I would have is in one column the state requirements, then I would have in another column maybe state universities, and then highly selective universities, community colleges, and then I would put in the last column is the requirements of RB, so that you can get a clear analysis of, what are we requiring compared to, the different the universities, community colleges, the state requirements, so they can get a clear view on a 1-page or 2-page document. Something that would just be a nice table to show the minimum requirements for all those different categories. And that could be somewhere where we start with the committee, as well as then bringing a report back to the board of just, are we in line with, can our kids get into highly selective schools? Can anybody that graduates under our current requirements be college and career ready? And not take any other additional courses, some of those things, so that, I think that'd be a good place to start.
Everything except the mandatory, the state minimums are in the curriculum guide, aren't they? The book you give out every year? Yeah, there's a chart in there already.
Right.
I have a question. How do we, I think it is important to include students and teachers and parents on the committee. How do we solicit students and teachers and parents for volunteers to do a committee like that?
We have some parent committees that we use already now that the state requires, like for handbook and some of that. So what we can do is we could put some feelers out through Patrons Council, and maybe
Tim, what we did with the health and safety, when we had the health and safety committee with that, people submitted in like a quasi resume of what I do job-wise and everything, and we selected people that were in the medical field.
I was asking the opposite end. How do we solicit people to tell them we have a committee, we're looking for members, submit something, so that anybody who might have some interest has at least a chance to throw their net.
Can we do it through Skyward and
Skyward
Patrons?
is what I was thinking. We could put out a message to Skyward that we were going to be forming this committee, and we can definitely put it in the student bulletin for the students and make an announcement if
Patrons.
people.
Right. And running this as a public committee, we'll set the date and time similar to like a board meeting, but not necessarily at that time. And it can be open to any visitor that wants to attend at that time. We can have a solid group of between the administration, the board, and the faculty, and then we could treat it as a regular public meeting where if any citizen comes and wants to add comments or input, we can include them.
I believe we should have a member who doesn't have students in the school on the committee. We have many people in district who pay taxes for this school, and they have opinions in both ways. They see the school as very valuable in their neighborhood, and they have biases on what they hope the school has and not, but we should have a public member on the committee also.
I would like
Oh,
to
that's
see
what
a
she said.
member who who is a part of the industry that would absorb the students that, Ms. Bilesma, you mentioned the STEM candidates. I can see a possible realignment of our curriculum to accommodate a grand portion of the students that choose STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, I guess, directions in life, in practical skills. I think we continue to call it applied arts now, but it's almost sounding like it's going to be a misnomer, that it would be something even bigger. But that's a rhetorical statement on my part. I don't expect an answer, but I would like to bring that up in whatever meeting we have with the community. But I'd certainly like to engage people who would absorb people with practical skills, the skilled machinist rather than the liberal arts majors.
And one thing we have to remember, if the ultimate goal of the board is to look at the graduation requirements and/or to alter the graduation requirements, most school districts that I have been a part of, and what the tradition is usually with that, their best practices with it, I should say, not tradition, is that when those changes are made, they start with an incoming freshman class, so that the game doesn't change, or kids that are on a different path or have already started a four-year plan that are at the high school, it doesn't change what they're doing or what classes they have taken. So you usually start those types of changes with an incoming freshman class and implement them in that manner.
We did that with the grades study. We did that. So this, is it this freshman year? Is the one that's starting off with?
Yes, yeah. And we expect, for instance, in the Common Core, that it looks like there's going to be the state will require a fourth year of math, they're discussing that, and that decision should be made soon. So we're also looking at, with that Common Core, the learning standards, what the state is looking to alter. And we do see their standards as pretty minimal. We do, I just urge us all to think about, we want our students to be competitive in the both work and for access to universities. And I think at present, while we're always looking to make our requirements as relevant as possible, they have opened up many pathways for our students, and our students have had access. So that's something that we want to keep in mind and consider. So possibly, Mr. Moon, we might want to consider even some university people that might be in the area that are, if there's admissions people or that we have access to, which could maybe give us a perspective of what they look at as well.
Maybe engage Triton or somebody from Triton. Yeah, that's a cool.
I was very impressed with the amount of people we had for the health and safety from the various fields that really participated, from doctors, nurses, hazardous claim analysis from the Marriott, apart from the Hyatt, being able to really work together on it. So I was very impressed. Okay, any other questions on the curriculum?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. I think, though, the board has to be very clear going forward. It seems that we're talking about two separate things. If we want to look at requirements, as a board in these financial times, we may want to say one of our objectives is to find out what the minimum requirements are, because that's what we are obligated to fund.
We already know that.
Yeah, but we're talking about bringing in everything else, and we're talking about a path, an ideal path.
Right.
That will be more than minimum, and then we'll be, if we make that a requirement, we will be obligated to fund that. And so we may, as a board, say that we will determine a minimum requirement that we will fund, and then, but here are pathways that we will hope to encourage.
Why, if we're going to put a committee with experts, including some board members, and say, look at the graduation rates, can't we rely on them to look at the state minimums, what we think we want to do,
And look at
make
what
a
other colleges are
presentation, and say why they are above the minimum, or if that's what they decide, and I'm sure they'll explain it all to us, and we'll decide what.
I think
we
the key
agree
thing with this is, you're preaching, let's go with the minimum and stuff like that. Our goal is to make sure that when our students come out of this high school, they are prepared and ready to go into whatever they want to do. from junior college to technical school to college, four-year college, to a select college, being able to give them the tools to make that happen. And so the minimum, which we already know about and everything like that, we need to be able to balance that to make sure that we are positioning our students that they're going to succeed in the next phase of their education.
Nobody's saying that we're not gonna offer that, but we gotta be careful what we mandate, because we have to be able to pay for it. And I just think we need to be careful going out on the big fishing expedition, that what we would like to have, be very clear when we do that.
Okay. Anything else?
You said on curriculum, one item wasn't covered yet.
I know, I'm waiting.
Okay.
So the last thing here is the summer curriculum guide. This is a draft. This is the first read. Like, as I stated earlier, this is more management than necessarily governance. There are some changes that need to be in there. Staff needs to be updated. Sometimes they're a little off. But one thing that the board will need to vote on, and we will bring forward to the board, is a recommendation on the classes we will run and who we will be recommended to the board to hire to staff those classes for the summer school. Pam, do you want to touch, there was a few questions in an email, just on some of the corrections or some of the explanations you had?
Right, yeah. We tend to, summer school has not been excessively robust here. You know, different schools have different histories with that. Our students have been most interested in taking semester classes. There hasn't been a lot of, even when we offer semester classes, they don't all fill, but we do every year offer what we think we need for, especially for credit recovery for students who perhaps failed one semester or failed a semester of a course, to keep them back on track. Or we have offered things like fine arts survey and health, and those have been popular courses. You know, we do follow the protocols in the bargaining agreement by making sure that we hire our teachers first, and our department chairs put that out to members of the department, to staff, what is in their own departments. We do prorate according to what is in the bargaining unit, according to the length of the class. Non-credit classes have been run just a little bit different, because there isn't any language in the bargaining agreement about the non-credit classes. So they kind of have a top. They prorate it for the amount of time they're going to offer that whether it's Camp College or it's just a non-credit offering that we're doing that's not an athletic camp. And that's the top amount that the teacher could earn, or the group of teachers who are working it. And then the bottom is, the least amount they make is if they don't take in enough, they only get what they take in. We don't lose money. The district doesn't lose money on it. So that's why they try to set usually a minimum amount of students. Last year, we had to have 18 students to run a class to be able to pay for it and cover the cost of the teachers. So with some of the other courses that are non-credit, if they don't take in enough money, they decide whether they want to run it and just get paid less because it's important for the kids, and then they make that decision. So I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Extended school year is a special education program. It runs on slightly different time than the rest of summer school, because they have to really coordinate with the feeder schools, and that there is no cost for that. That's included in the students' IEP and access to their education through the summer. So trying to think if there was anything else that was
How does it work,
important.
Pam?
What's that?
You said kids can take the class if they fail one or both semesters of something like math and English, but we're only offering a half semester class. So if I fail, 2 semesters of math as a freshman, I can make up one semester in the summer and...
Well, what happens is, they usually make one up, and then they do the other with a correspondence course, or they do the credit recovery. We're offering a credit recovery right now after school for some students.
Okay.
That they can take it through and get a little bit of assistance from somebody. So there are other ways, and oftentimes a student doesn't fail both semesters.
Okay.
So, they make it through one but not the other, so...
So if I fail the first semester and I pass the second semester, I still have to take the first semester over?
Yeah.
One other question that we need to ask the board, that I will need input from the board on, besides who will be teaching these classes, in regards to funding. A lot of school districts have eliminated the free and reduced lunch waivers for students for summer school, under the notion of, we waive the fees or we provide you the educational opportunities during the regular school year. If a student blows that off or fails a class, even if it's for, they have, that's an additional expense that the district should not cover. A lot of school districts that are dealing with financial issues have moved to where summer school is pay as you go and that's it. There's no more free and reduced lunch for summer school. You are not required by the state to pay for summer school. So that's something I would need the board to think about, and when we bring forward the teachers in April, but we should talk about this in March, or we could just discuss it a little bit tonight, but we don't need a decision by tonight.
So in the
That's-
summer.
I have a couple questions. Number one, last year, and we still haven't got a good accounting of it, the summer program costs, I don't know if we can account for them. I know they were all pushed together into one account. I don't think you were able to decipher out what it actually cost us. Secondly, when we're looking at, again, I'm going to harp on this, when we look at costs, it's just not personnel costs. We're going to be running air conditioner in here. We're going to have overhead costs. Are we truly looking to make this a break-even proposition, or are we strictly looking at it from a personnel cost side of
We
it?
might need to up that fee if hearing
Right.
that question tonight.
Right.
You're going to have Aramark having to stick around, maybe an additional person
Right.
coming through. You got air conditioning, you got electrical. I mean, we have to look
we
at
were
it.
definitely containing the area of the building. We did some of that last year, but we have talked about doing more of it, that, you're not going to necessarily be able to teach out of your classroom. You're going to teach out of the zone. We're going to be, turning the air conditioning on. And so we've been working with Joel Hatchie on that we are going to limit, we're not going to be scattershot throughout the whole building. We did some of that last year, but we plan on doing more of that. But if you want to increase the fee for the overhead of that, you're right, we have not adjusted for that.
We need to look at that, and I could bring a different accounting back to the board, and that's why this is the first read. And Tim can work with Joel on that, because you're going to talk with, Art's going to talk in a second about the summer camp program, but one thing we did different this year with the summer camps is we added an additional fee on that off the top for every camper. We'll be going back to the district funds to offset some of those costs, the wear and tear, the maintenance, and some of the utilities and stuff. So I think we need to look at the fee. The second thing I think we need to look at is to make, probably the sooner that we make it public that summer school is going to be at the expense of the family or the child, that will help us also.
Can you give us from the last summer school, how many were free and reduced? And out of those free and reduced, how many passed the class?
I don't think we should have that information.
You can have a general number of how
General
many
number, yeah.
students were waived. I don't know if we need to know
All
necessarily
right,
pass or
so
fail.
if you can give me how many kids we had last year in free and reduced?
We can have any of the information if it doesn't mention the kid's name.
Right.
And is these class sizes to fall into our having to approve policy?
I think so.
Well, if we run them at,
If they,
if we run it to, they're paying for the expense and it covers the cost of the teacher and the utilities, I think we would, by just doing the math, we should be able to come up with what a minimum would be to where we can keep the fee somewhat reasonable and a minimum to break even.
I might remind you that language isn't in the policy to adopt it, if that's what he's asked.
I'm just,
I
Does
don't
that
think,
include
I don't
summer
think the
school?
language is in there either, though, that says it's for every single class. I mean, this is a course that they're paying for, so I don't know, is that something that we would treat?
I would probably look at it as long as it's cost neutral to the district, then maybe I'd be more than willing not to. But somebody's got to prove to me it's cost neutral.
So if they took a class and said, here's what all our costs are gonna be, just figure out teacher, textbooks if needed, or anything else, and then facility, and added that all up and said, okay, this is what our minimum is, and this is what we're charging equal, that would work for you. Am I right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
But is summer school under the contract?
Yeah.
The rate of,
Rate of pay is in
The
there.
rate of pay.
Rate of pay is. So
for
it's summer
credit
sc-
classes, it doesn't specify for non-credit.
Right.
So, does the policy then cover the non-credit classes?
I would say,
For non-credit, I would say that's kind of iffy.
I think the whole
The
thing to
credit-
me is kind of iffy because if they're
The
paying
credit,
for.
it's not iffy, the way, we made it not intended for it not to apply at the
Right.
time for summer school, but the language is pretty clear. It says course, in summer school are courses, and you could argue whether non-credit, although you said non-credit course, but
I have a question then. Could we not, and I don't need an answer, something to think about, we should think about, could we not increase more of these non-credit offerings, especially like in the fine arts selection, and actually the district could bring in money and make summer school profitable for the school?
I wish that would be the case. We canceled a number of fine arts offerings because we didn't have enough people sign up. Like the ceramics in the summer didn't run. There were a few, I don't have that right in front of me, but I, was disappointed to see those not run. So.
Are you
think-
asking that question in regards to, like, could a kid take a graduation requirement in the summer to get that out of the way, so that during the school year, that would open up a class?
Well, I'm asking it in both ways, because as the monies become tight, we may not be able to offer as robust a fine arts program, but we could certainly have opportunities for fine arts in the summer non-credit, so that you experience those classes and have those opportunities to do pottery, photography, painting, drawing, all of that. But then, even when I looked at the credit courses, the offerings were so low. Could we expand that, and some students might be able to reduce their load during the
Well,
year?
the only thing you have to be cautious of is two things. One, with the courses that you're offering, what you're trying to do is provide those opportunities to get kids back on pace to graduate, not to necessarily fill electives or interest-based requirements. You're trying to just make sure that the kid that failed the required course, that is a progressive course that they need for graduation, that they can get back on track with summer school. What you also have to be cautious of is it can be done. I have seen some schools do this, but you have to watch is that you don't diminish the curriculum that a kid would normally get in an 18-week semester by taking it 6 weeks over the summer in a condensed manner. So you just say we'd have to make sure the curriculum is robust to match the same curriculum a kid's going to get on a traditional 18-week semester.
So then for the non-credit courses, those are completely paid for by the students. That might be a way to augment some of these experiences that are not for credit, but
I get what you're
just
saying. So a kid
experience.
that wants to take some fine arts but doesn't want to put it in their traditional schedule could take
Right.
it there.
well, out of the courses that you say are for credit, they all are for kids who failed except for US Government 12 and Fine Arts Served, if I read it correctly.
Right, and we didn't, of all of those, the only two that had enough students had 18 or more were Fine Arts Survey and Health. Nothing else had enough students to run
Right now?
last
year.
summer.
Oh, okay.
Last summer,
And
on the
health
top
is
there.
still for kids who failed and they still
No,
make-
health is sophomores, they get it out of the way.
Oh, it's for,
a
I'm
lot
sorry,
of
it's for
students-
sophomores or
it's-
juniors or seniors
Yeah,
who failed.
right.
I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, I would love to see eventually talking about STEM, talking about interesting things that schools are doing, have a real science research class over the summer that would, students would be partnering with medical professionals and, at universities or research labs, and these have been classes that are going on in summer at other places and are really exciting for our students. We have a lot of people who want to partner with us. That's where I'd like to go, is build a summer program that's really allowing those kind of opportunities. So far, it just hasn't been a real tradition here to go to summer school. Other schools have that. The summer athletic camps and programs are very popular here, so you tend to have kids are more involved in those than taking the summer classes. But I would like to, that would be another thing that we could look at if we pull together a community, that group of people. What would there be other things they might be interested that experiences that we could give students, like Ms. Resta was talking about, that would be maybe different than what they can't get during the year, not to replace it, but just to augment and give students really great opportunities that are good for college interviews, college essays and for their resume to move on to the next phase of life.
One of the reasons it hadn't been so successful in academics is we only got air conditioning a few years ago.
That's probably true.
So
Pam,
now we're in
Tim,
the big
can-
times.
Can you put together so we can give to the board at the
Sure.
first meeting of March, what we anticipate the cost to be to staff a class, as well as the utilities needed to support, the utilities and Aramark support needed to cover a class? And then so that we can break it down of, what an average, what the fee should be. Board of Education, just so I can get a general idea, should we look at that so that we, no free and reduced lunch waiver, or do we still want to have that?
And if you decide what you and Pam want to recommend.
Okay, I'll bring that to the board in March then. How many students in the past have been free and reduced lunch, and if we offer that or not. And the other thing is, I think those would be the two things that we should focus on for right now, is the cost, to make that cost neutral, what that fee increase would look like, and whether or not a waiver.
And it, so much of this conversation focused on dollars, but if we're disadvantaging the school and the students by saying if your people who are free and reduced don't get the waiver, and then they're not graduating on time, which is another requirement we have, right? And they look at it by categories, that's got to be weighed in the decision, not just, are we going to save 10 more bucks here?
Well, I appreciate you remembering that has changed, that how we count our graduation rate,
Right.
which is on the report card, and there's going to be a new Illinois Interactive report card, and that's important. It's in the 4 years, when you come in and when you come out, we have to
Right.
count those students. So if we don't give them more time on task, that's what they need. If they failed, sometimes they're just behind, they're deficient in skills, they need that extra time with the teacher. So if we don't do it then it's not only going to hurt them, but it also does come into our graduation rate at the end.
So you weigh that into what you recommend,
Right.
right, Kevin?
I think we need to look, I just think we need to look, like I said, I've talked to a lot of superintendents, and that seems to be the trend, is that things become tougher and tougher, but a lot of those superintendents are from school districts that offer some busing for summer school and some of those things, so it might be a little more unique where we can look at it, and can we get by? We might be able to get by.
We also had something that we did at my former district, where we gave a rebate if the student passed the class. They got half of their money back, or they got, there was an incentive for
That would help,
students.
that would be hard to keep it cost neutral if we're
It'd
giving
be hard to
rebates.
give a cost neutral, and give money back. But if, instead of giving the class totally for free, you can charge the family and then say, but if you pass the class, we would, not charge you the full amount. It's another option, instead of going all or nothing,
Right.
if you wanted to consider a middle ground, that was,
I would like to also ask, as we're going forward, we said in the past we tried to offer some classes, not for credit, to augment experiences in the summer. But they hadn't been widely accepted. But then, if we look at the past, we were in a 3-year rebuilding, a renovation project, so the school was not really accessible, and we've never had air conditioning until just now. I mean, would it be possible to offer some of these and not have them if we don't have enough to cover costs?
I think we could put the ones back on the list that they've had in the past and see what draws the attention, and if it gets enough to be cost. I think the key word I heard tonight from the board is
Right.
cost neutral.
Yes.
So, and we want to obviously control
Right.
what that fee is, so it's not astronomical. We're not saying, hey, it's $600 to take a summer school course. But if that's what it comes out to be, it comes out to be. But what we don't want to do is say, hey, only 8 kids signed up, so now you got to divide that. We should say, come up with a minimum that it takes a course to run at this flat fee.
Right, at a reasonable
And if it's
fee.
there, I don't see why we, couldn't offer it.
Okay, any other questions?